This week in Metro Detroit, a tremendous loss for Melvindale and the law enforcement community. Officer Mohammed Saeed, affectionately known as Officer Mo, killed in the line of duty. How a toy drive for kids is helping heal broken hearts. A mother of 6 who already lost her husband to cancer suffers another loss as her home burns down. What you can do to help a widow in need. In major news that impacts Michigan and all of America, President Joe Biden decides he will not run for re-election. The only president to do this while actively campaigning. How this reset changes the landscape in our state?
Are you prepared to take the vice presidency if it's offered, ma'am?
No, I'm not planning to go anywhere.
And why Governor Gretchen Whitmer says that she is not going to be VP, at least not right now. Those stories and more up next on The Rundown. Welcome, I am Brandon Hudson, and this is The Rundown where we run down the biggest local stories of the week. But before we get to our must-see videos, we have to talk about that seismic shift in American politics that happened last weekend. So around 2 o'clock Sunday, you may have gotten an alert on your phone saying that the current president, Joe Biden, is withdrawing from the presidential race. And this is big because it's not only big in our country, but it's big in Michigan because our state could help decide who the 47th president of the United States is. Now, the attention almost immediately turned to Vice President Kamala Harris, who within a 36-hour window raised $100 million, and many of that came from a lot of first-time donors. Well, since Mr. Biden dropped out of the race, we do want to refresh your memory on who the vice president is. Kamala Harris is from California. She's the daughter of an Indian mother and Jamaican father. She graduated from Howard University and HBCU, Historically Black College University. And Ms. Harris served as a prosecutor and was a California senator from 2017 to 2021 when she became vice president. During her time as VP, Kamala Harris did take a trip to Africa, and one of the journalists who was able to go on a trip with her was Dr. Nicolai Corte. He joins us now for an interview, and he talks about how that trip inspired him to write a book. Dr. Nicolai Corte, hey, it's been a while. It's good to see you again. Journalist, host, author, you're doing it all, man. I want to be like you when I grow up. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Brandon. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining the Rundown. Look, this has been a big week for yourself, a big week in politics, and it just kind of merges together. So you have a book that's out, The Motherland and Me. You had a chance, there it is right there. You had a chance to go travel with Vice President Kamala Harris to Africa. Tell us about that experience. I remember we had a chance to talk about this, but tell us about that experience.
Well, Brandon, as you know, it was a dream assignment, and I was co-anchoring the Black Report in Detroit at the time when this dream assignment fell in my lap, the opportunity to travel to Ghana and Tanzania and Zambia, along with the press corps covering Vice President Harris's historic trip to the motherland. Many folks may not know this, but my father's homeland is Ghana. That's where he was born and raised. My name is Ghanaian. And so when I called the book Kamala, the Motherland and Me, I'm the me, right? That's what made this trip both a personal and professional endeavor. And I saw so many things on this trip, demonstrations of the vice president's leadership on the world stage, seeing how she was received on the world stage by other world leaders, but also by folks in country. There are over 8,000, mostly young people, that came to hear her speak in Black Star Square in Ghana. When's the last time you saw 8,000 people come to see the vice president in the United States? And so I thought that was amazing. Seeing her on the world stage along with the first Black woman vice president turned president in Tanzania. Sound familiar, right? And in Zambia, this vice president could have done a trip that was more public health focused, that was more humanitarian focused. She chose to focus on investing in Mother Africa, investing in innovation, investing in the creative economy, investing in clean energy and some of the climate resilience work that's afoot on the continent. Who would have ever thought that they're using AI-powered technology to fight against climate change in places like Zambia? And so, when I came back and looked through my notes, I thought, okay, I'll do a simple news package on this, maybe a two-parter, maybe a limited series podcast. As I look through my notes, I surprised myself and said, "Oh, this has to be on the written page. This has to be a book. This story has to be immortalized at a time where we're seeing an uptick in calls for book bans and other forms of censorship." And so I thought it was my duty to share the story, and so I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. And this is the result of over a year's worth of work. And Brandon, I've got to let you and the audience know that right before we published this, I scored an exclusive one-on-one interview with the vice president to get her reflection on the trip a year later. And so nobody's seen it, but
Right.
but you can, and your viewers can if they purchase Kamala, the Motherland, and Me, available with all online retailers right now.
Very nice. Very nice. Look, this is dropping at a time when now Kamala has gone from vice president to uh, Democratic presidential or presumptive nominee. I know she has the delegates. So, how do you feel about your memoir, your passion project on the vice president happening at a time when the vice president is making a major life change herself?
Well, I feel incredibly humble that uh, somehow, some way, I was chosen to be a vessel for this particular story for a time such as this. What an enormous opportunity, but also I feel the weight of responsibility, weight of history. I feel it on my shoulders. And I think there are a number of people that are just uh, laying eyes on Vice President Kamala Harris, and they want to know more about her. They want to know more about what she's done. They want to know more about how she's received by other leaders across the country and around the world. And while we're seeing the Democratic Party really unite around Vice President Harris, and we're starting to see, world leaders sort of tip their hand and, speak to Vice President Harris's leadership. And so I see this book as sort of filling in some blanks. I see this book as an opportunity for people to re-examine some of their assumptions about Vice President Harris, some of their assumptions about the continent of Africa that I think a lot of people talk about and think about like it's the size of Connecticut, and to re-examine some of our assumptions about one another. This book is also a call to action for the media to do better. For a long time, there had been a caricature of, I think, who the vice president was. And so on the trip, even I was sort of taken aback at like, oh, wow, no, she's really dialed in, right? She's really focused. She's really determined. She's really well prepared, right? Maybe even sometimes over prepared. Well, that's not a storyline that we report on and hear nearly enough. And so that's a part of the reason why this book exists. It's to help folks to re-examine their assumptions with some rigor.
We're having this conversation a day after President Joe Biden gave his address about his withdrawal. Kamala jumping into this race came just days after the RNC. You're in DC, you're dialed in. What have you heard in Republican circles about who their opponent may be now?
Well, I think Republicans did not anticipate that this would happen, and if it happened, it wouldn't happen this quickly in this way. I think they've been taken aback at how unified the Democratic Party has become in a very, very short period of time. I've been a student of politics my whole life, and I've never quite seen things come together the way they have in the past week. I mean, look at not just a wide range of Democratic governors. In fact, I think every Democratic governor has endorsed Vice President Harris to be the Democratic nominee. But in addition to that, we're seeing most Democrats in Congress. We're seeing that there are a lot of folks out there, or a lot of organizations out there that are throwing their support behind her. She's becoming a bit of a phenomenon. And at a time where I think the people are hungry to turn the page. You know, there was an article in the NPR, I believe, that said this is the first election in decades where there has not been a Biden or Clinton on the ballot. Think about that. As president or vice president, a Biden, Clinton, or a Bush on the ballot. And so, you know, the Democrats are really sort of meeting the moment, you know, by giving folks somebody they can be excited about. It's not lost on the Republicans, and it's certainly not lost on Democrats, the impact of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And this is a vice president that we've seen lean into conversations around restoring Roe. She's been crisscrossing the country on a reproductive justice tour, you know, talking about the impact of Roe and lifting up those voices that have been impacted, in addition to gun violence prevention and economic opportunity.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. Kamala, the motherland, and me. Check it out, and much continued success. Almost immediately, the focus became who would be the vice presidential candidate. Now, one of the names that's floated around was Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who recently met with President Biden as he mulled over his life-changing decision. Tim Skubic tracked her down for an answer. Take a listen.
Are you prepared to take the vice presidency if it's offered, ma'am?
No, I'm not planning to go anywhere.
So if they offer it, you will not take it?
I am not leaving Michigan. I'm proud to be the governor of Michigan. I've been consistent. I know everyone is always suspicious and asking this question over and over again. I know you're doing your job. I'm not going anywhere.
Conversely, since our last episode, former president and Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump named his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, who spoke at last week's Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Here's what you need to know about him. He's a U.S. Senator from Ohio and a proud graduate of Ohio State University. And in 2016, he wrote the best-selling book Hillbilly Elegy, which became a movie. Now, he has talked about his mother's struggles and overcoming addiction. Vance is the first millennial to run for vice president. All right, now that you have had a chance to catch up and digest what has happened in American politics in the past few days, let's get to our must-see videos. First, this is something that we have seen too many times in Southeast Michigan, a damaged vehicle outside of an assembly plant. Warren police say thieves smashed through the fence of the Chrysler stamping plant and stole 10 Grand Wagoneers, totaling $1 million. And here's the thing, some of these thieves were teenagers. Police, with the help of DPD, recovered 4, but they are looking for the rest. And here's the deal, this type of theft is not new. Days earlier, 5 thieves rammed an SUV through a Harley-Davidson dealership in Taylor. 2 minutes later, they stole $100,000 worth of bikes. Our second video is a driver taking a wrong turn into Lake St. Clair. Chopper captures a car submerged underwater. But I want you to stick around because at the end of this episode, you're going to meet the young hero who saved her life. Now to one of our top trending stories of the week. He was a son, brother, and most notably a Melvindale police officer. Mohammed Saeed, also known as Officer Mo, was shot and killed during a struggle with a suspect. The loss sent a wave of grief over the family and community. His loved ones grieved. Cops worked until his accused killer was off the streets. Robin Murdoch has that story. And then after you hear Robin's story and interview, I want you to stick around and listen to what Charlie Langton was able to find out about the officer who worked closely with Officer Saeed.
I have a son going into his junior year of college at studying criminal justice. It makes me afraid for him to be a law enforcement officer.
A somber yet symbolic scene outside the Ford Performing Arts Center as firefighters carefully drape this flag across the entryway for today's visitation. Hundreds expected to head here to honor Melvindale police officer Mohammed Saeed, who was killed in the line of duty over the weekend following a struggle with what turned out to be an armed suspect. The littlest gestures now having the biggest impact, according to the 26-year-old's younger brother.
I seen it and I seen everybody's messages, and that shows now because they love Mo, because Mo loved them.
A couple different online fundraisers will help build a well in Africa in Officer Mo's memory, as he was affectionately known. It is a tradition in the Muslim culture. And all day Friday, half of the sales at the Westbourne Car Wash in both Dearborn and Dearborn Heights will be given to the fallen officer's family. The owner has personal ties to the law enforcement community himself.
Every time my brother left the house, I knew that there was a chance I'd never see him again. My heart goes out to the Melvindale Police Department. My heart goes out to Officer Muhammad Saeed's family.
Officer Saeed will lie in state at the Ford Performing Arts Center in Dearborn today. His visitation will go until 8 o'clock tonight. On Friday, a traditional funeral service will take place here beginning at 9 o'clock in the morning. There will then be a procession through the officer's neighborhood as his body is moved to the American Muslim Society Mosque for another religious ceremony set to start at 11.
We need to be cognizant of what the customs are for within the Muslim community. So we're working very closely with the imam and the family.
All of this planning and preparation so that the final farewell for Officer Saeed is a memorable one. His very own patrol car now parked out front of his visitation as part of the tribute. Officer Saeed had only been with the department for about a year, but during that time, his dedication and drive, undeniable. We are told serving and protecting those around him is what he was born to do, and he did so until the very end.
So young and so much ahead of him and so beloved.
Look, Robert Murdoch, look, thank you for joining us here on the Rundown. Look, this has been a very difficult week for the community in Melvindale, really Metro Detroit, and all over for law enforcement. This death in particular of Officer Saeed really seems to resonate more, and it speaks to the impact that Officer Mo had just in the time that you've been able to cover this story. Tell us about the impact that Officer Mo had on Melvindale and really the greater community.
Well, you can see it the moment that you are at the Melvindale Police Department, Brandon. The second you are there, there's a memorial outside of the police department. The other day when I was there, they actually had lit candles there. A number of community members also going inside of the Melvindale Police Department, just dropping off toys, because that is something that Officer Mo was very, very passionate about. He was passionate about giving back to the community. So they've been dropping off toys so that these toys could be given to kids in the area. So that's just some of the little ways that this is really touching the community. And I think this is a very difficult time too, because just in the past couple of weeks, I mean, this is the second officer funeral that we've actually had to cover in our area, but this is the third officer that's been killed since late June. So, you know, it is just a difficult time for a lot of people just trying to understand how something like this could happen yet again.
Give us a sense of, you know, how you got to be a part of this story, because I know Jessica had covered it Monday when Michael Lopez had been arrested, and then you picked it up, and then you have been in the community, and now you're there for the funeral. So walk us through how you got to be a part of the story and where you are now with the visitation happening as we are doing this interview.
Well, the first day that I was on the story, Brandon, was actually, it was on Tuesday when they were looking for the suspect. They were still trying to track down that suspect, 44-year-old suspect in this situation. So that's first when I got brought into it. And then, of course, we're talking about him getting ready to be arraigned. So we're talking about it again, him being into custody. And now all of the funeral arrangements are in place. Obviously, the visitation, the funeral set to happen, on Friday. And this is just such really an emotional, event for a lot of people, as you are seeing more and more people come together. I mean, they're expecting hundreds and hundreds of people to be part of, all of these events just to memorialize his life and the sacrifice that he meant to this community, to all of Metro Detroit, to all of Michigan, really.
During this week, what have you learned about Officer Mo?
Well, I've talked to a number of different people. I've talked to the police chief on many occasions over the past several days. And it just sounds like, he grew up here and he wanted to give it back to the community. I mean, that is what he was destined to do, to serve and protect the people here in Melvindale, around the area. I mean, the chief told me that he remembers when Officer Saeed was just a little boy. He was playing soccer and he showed interest at that time that he wanted to be a police officer. And then eventually he was a police officer working under the chief. So everything just kind of came full circle circle for the chief. And you're hearing that from so many people who've seen him as a little kid and then grow up to the officer that he came to be.
Well, he'll be forever remembered a hero. Robin Murdoch, we appreciate it. Look, we always say that, our thoughts are with the family of Officer Saeed, as well as with the families of the other law enforcement families that have lost a loved one this summer. And we appreciate it, and we'll catch you again on our TV.
Thanks, Brandon, for having me.
I don't even ask my parents for anything before I ask Mom.
Officer Mo's 22-year-old brother Ahmad still can't believe he's gone. You have to know the community loves your brother.
I seen it, and I seen everybody's messages, and that shows now because they love Mo, because Mo loved them.
I need you here. He said, I got one running.
Mo's partner, Officer Hassam Aib, getting the call that Mo was in trouble.
I got there and started asking people, where's my partner? Nobody would answer my questions. So I just started jumping fences, looking for him. And then
You found him?
Yeah. This is a day I'll never forget in my life.
Can you be a police officer now?
At this point, I don't know. I'm gonna try. Nah, I have to hold up for him because he loved his community.
Well, now to another story of loss and a mother's journey to get her family back on their feet. Krista Stapleton went to the Faster Horses Music Festival last weekend. It was a way for her to unwind after losing her husband to cancer. But during her trip, the mother of 6 learned that her house in Garden City caught fire. Ingrid Kelly spoke to Krista, who is determined to help her kids.
It was supposed to be a weekend full of happiness and great music.
We were enjoying the concerts, enjoying the fun.
Krista Stapleton and her best friend were taking in the sights and sounds of the Faster Horses Fest in Brooklyn, Michigan. But that sense of joy would abruptly come to an end.
All of a sudden, 3 of my neighbors were calling me at the same time. She said, your house is on fire. And so my friend and I left the concert as quickly as we could.
When the school teacher and mom of 6 got back home to Garden City and saw her home, all she felt was
panic, because my animals were there. And our life is there.
Fortunately, Krista's kids were away from the home with family and friends when this incident took place. But this fire-damaged house was more than a home. It's also where crafted creations by Krista took place.
I create cakes, cupcakes, cake pops, cookies for events, birthdays, weddings.
But the fire has paused production and additional income for this small business entrepreneur.
The kitchen is completely gone. One of our cats did not make it.
But as Krista waited for updates from fire crews at the scene, her sense of panic did not vanish, because all she could think about were her husband's cremated remains that needed to be saved.
My husband passed away 2 years ago of brain cancer, and his ashes were in there, and a firefighter went back in there, and that room was on fire, and he went in and grabbed him out for me.
Krista says she's grateful that something so precious was not lost.
Not only does it mean everything to me, my kids, they would have been devastated if they didn't have their dad with us.
A GoFundMe has been started on behalf of the family, and the mom tells us that the money will be used to get the family back on track.
To get all the necessary things for school that are coming up, shoes, clothing, all of my kids' sports equipment.
Fire officials tell Fox 2 the cause of the fire remains under investigation. For now, this mom says she will focus on working to find a new place to call home.
I will always be there for my kids and show them that you can come out of anything. So with our church and our family and friends and community helping us, I think we're going to be as good as we can be again.
In Garden City, Ingrid Kelly, Fox 2 News.
Before we go, let's get back to that car that was underwater in Lake St. Clair. The hero who saved the driver was a 15-year-old who just happened to be fishing nearby. Dave Kinchin has the story.
Chaos on Lake St. Clair in Grosse Pointe Woods Tuesday afternoon.
The car goes probably about, I would say, 14 yards, 15 yards far away from shore.
15-year-old John Agnello went from trying to catch bass and walleye at Lakefront Park to saving a life in seconds.
I'm just fishing, I mean, nothing crazy, and I hear a loud noise, badoosh.
St. Clair Shores police say an elderly woman had just driven into the water.
So then I run over there instantly with a neighbor. He's out with his dog. We both get in there at the same time. We just both swim into it instantly. All she was doing, just I got there, she was like this. Wasn't talking. I was like, do you need help? Come on, let's get out. We convinced her to get out.
At one point, he says he thought someone else might have been in the car.
The first thing I thought of in my head is pick up a rock. I grabbed the back window, smash it. And I go in there, can't really see, it's blurry. I feel around, can't feel anyone. Then I go over the car, got a few cuts, not a big deal. Go to shotgun, I feel around, there's no one in there.
He says he was running on pure adrenaline, not even noticing the cuts that required his leg to get bandaged up.
I couldn't even feel the cuts because I was so locked in, you know what I mean? My family taught me to take action, not just stand there, go on my phone, simple stuff like that. That's how they raised me, so, that's not what I did.
Police say the woman behind the wheel was taken to the hospital for evaluation. Meantime, John's family is absolutely beaming with pride and gratitude.
We couldn't be more proud. And when I heard today, I was working from home and cried. I was just so proud of him. I'm a first responder, been in medical my whole life, and I'm so proud of him. I think we found his career path, and I can't wait to watch him grow and blossom. So proud of you, John.
Thank you.
Dave Kinchin, Fox 2 News.
Salute to that young man, and this is another reminder to always be aware of your surroundings. And that ends this week's Rundown. I am Braden Hudson. We appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.